Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It feels like it's been a hot minute. Now, who's addicted to Elden Ring? I'm not. Are you kidding me? I swear, I can stop playing whenever I want. Back here in Call of Duty world, though, I wanted to touch on some of the ammo types for these Vanguard shotguns that are often overlooked, maybe for a particular reason. We have Hollow Point rounds, and then we have Frangible rounds, or shells, I should say. What do they do? Are there any consequences to using them, and are they secretly top-tier shotgun ammo types? So we're going to hop into these things together in one video and talk about it, and I'll give you my opinion on them both as a whole. Be sure to check out the timestamps below in the description if you want a particular part of the video. First off, let's talk Hollow Point rounds. Now, what do they do? Simply put, they buff the damage you do to the limbs while decreasing your overall damage ranges. Now, let's dissect that. First off, what are considered limbs in this context and how much does it help? Thankfully, I have these awesome little pictures to show off just that. These are actually screen caps that I took from the newly launched sim.gg website. You may remember them as the site that covered Battlefield stats for many years. Well, now they've delved into Warzone, and I had the honor of being able to help confirm a lot of the stats on the shotguns in particular, and was able to give my input on some of the beta testing on the site. So shout out to the team of Sim for their awesome work. Now onto the stats. This is the base combat shotgun. As you can see here, it's basically damage done per pellet. So if you hit, say, the arms, they deal about 50 points per pellet. You multiply that by 4 since there is a pellet cap at 4 pellets, and you get 200 damage. Now, what happens when we equip Hollow Point rounds? As you can see, the shoulders, lower arms, and the upper and lower leg regions do more damage. By how much? Well, it's about a 6% increase to limbs, and that's for all of the shotguns that have it. Even though you only see the combat shotgun here, the others I went and confirmed get about the same amount of a boost. That's all fine and dandy, but does it actually make a difference? Well, not really. The boost is nice, and technically the gun should feel just a little bit more consistent, but the fact of the matter is most of the time you'll be hitting the stomach region, and yes, you can hit arms if they are in front of the enemy's stomach, but it deals very similar damage to that region already, so the boost isn't really that great. It doesn't change any of the time to kill values for really any range that I can tell, and all it's really doing is just making it slightly more forgiving if you scratch someone's arm or leg with a pellet. You know, when you kind of just barely hit them with that hipfire reticle, it doesn't really have any huge positive impact. If you could stack it with something like slugs, that would be kind of cool, but you can't have slugs in this equipped since it's in the same ammo type category. Also, one huge thing is that these rounds do hurt your damage range. Across the board, it seems like it hurts range by about 9%. So the base combat shotgun is going to go from about 3.6 meters for that max damage range to about 3.2. Since these shotguns already struggle with range, this makes it even more noticeable, and for some reason, I was even noticing it pretty often in Plunder of all game modes, where shotguns can usually do more work. So overall, my thoughts on Hollow Point rounds for the shotguns, I would say overall just avoid them. Unfortunately, there just isn't a good enough trade-off with the range penalty. Even if you have no penalty for range, it still doesn't seem worth it compared to things like Packed Powder, Incendiary, and Buck and Slug. There really is no reason to use this type, which makes me sad because I like having a good variety of useful attachments, and these just really don't cut it, sadly. Now on to the next ammo type we have, which is Frangible. This one is making a return actually from Modern Warfare gun perks if you remember. So Frangible Shells inflict the wounding effect and slow enemy movement when shooting at the legs. The wounding effect is basically going to delay your health regeneration and make it slower. By how much, you ask? Well, you can see that in real time, health regen starts at around the 5-second mark after you take damage, and then with the Frangible perk, it takes about an additional 4 seconds before health regeneration starts. The actual health bar regenerating doesn't really seem to take any longer from what I can tell, but the real power anyway is that the enemy's time until they start healing is almost doubled. Now, what about the movement penalty? Well, again, sadly, I can't really tell much of a difference, at least when I'm walking. I shot legs many times, and really, there is no pronounced change to movement speed. If you remember the Modern Warfare gun perk for Frangible, it was really noticeable, and it had this sort of like stun effect on your vision as well. On these shotguns, it just isn't pronounced at all, to a point where it's not even noticeable. So it has basically no effect as far as I can tell. Now, knowing this, is it a good ammo type to run? As you probably think, like Hollow Point, not really. It's just, again, more of a gimmick, and it's useful, more useful I would say than Hollow Point, but it's very niche and, again, gimmicky. The health regen delay is nice, but in a practical sense, people can just stem shot themselves to heal and get out of the area quick. And if you do hit someone and they manage to get away, you have teammates that can push like they always tend to for me, and even though they won't be healing, they can still play it up, which works too. It is somewhat useful, don't get me wrong. I think it's more useful than Hollow Point. It's just you have to sacrifice one of the other much more practical and useful ammo types like Buck and Slug or Packed Powder. It's useful, but more niche than anything. It's one of those perks that people just put on if they have nothing else to use, because why the hell not? You have the slot, so go ahead. But overall, I'd say that these two ammo types are just more gimmicks than anything useful, and in reality, you're better off just running something else for your shotgun. For an SMG, these type of ammunitions can be a lot more beneficial and useful with that constant output of damage since they're mostly full auto, but a shotgun, especially a pump action, just doesn't really benefit from it that much. Things like the Origin 12, they might a little bit, but of course that's a Modern Warfare shotgun, it has its own perk, and that's actually somewhat useful, but to be honest, it's just not very great. I also do want to point out that it didn't seem to make a difference if you had armor or if you didn't have armor with Frangible. It seemed like no matter what, your movement speed wasn't really changing, so that's something to keep in mind, because with the Modern Warfare perk, it was only working if you didn't have armor equipped. But that's just my opinion on it, so now I want to know, what are your thoughts on these two attachments? Am I wrong? Are they actually super useful, and have you had any good luck with them? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.